Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, and buonasera, Lazio world. Welcome to our instant reaction pod. A little bit of extra stoppage time. As always, we are reviewing Monza versus Lazio. I'm your host, Sean McIntosh, joined as always by Caleb Adams. Caleb, what a disastrous start to the season. Uh, we finished this one at a 1-1 draw, 4 points in 5 matches to open this campaign. Just before we even talk about this match, overall feelings on where we're at 5 matches into this thing.
You said it best, and I knew it would take some time. I knew hey, we got a lot of pieces coming in, but I definitely expected much more. I definitely expected. I feel like we're not even reaching the bare minimum of where we should be. Right. That's the main concern for me, is that we don't have to be world class, giant slaying Lazio just yet, right? But at the beginning of the season with new pieces, you still want to have a solid kind of baseline, which is beating teams like Monza, and we're not even or Lecce or any of these teams, right? And we're not even doing the minimum that we should be doing. So that's concerning. So it's definitely concerning. And we talked about it earlier, where hey, we're gonna really judge the team once we start playing Serie A once again. After Champions League, we got a big home game against Monza. Like this, we can judge the team there, right? We can judge the team properly there. If they take care of business, right, on track, all good. But we're here now. We drew at home against them. They practically dominated us at home in a lot of ways, which is shocking. But we'll get more into it.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned Lecce, who sit third in Serie A right now. So, boy, would it be good to be Lecce right now. So let's dive into this match. Describe it, 3 words or less.
Pathetic. I mean, that's just one word this time needed.
That's all it takes, one word.
Pathetic. And me saying that because of what I mentioned earlier. Pathetic in that you're at home. You're supposed to be the protagonist on this team, and yet you're getting outplayed by Monza at home. It's not like we rotated players and had like a week 11 either, right? Yeah, we had a couple of changes here and there, but our quality did not drop significantly with the changes at all. And it's just to be outplayed, outworked at home, following the poor start that we had against these kind of lower league sides. It's just pathetic. I mean,
yeah,
it's pathetic.
So, I have a sleep once again, because you would think, coming off an exhilarating finish to that Champions League match, with Provedel coming up big and in something that just goes viral and a positive moment for Lazio, you would think they would have some sort of energy. You mentioned some changes in the rotation. So 4 new players in the starting 11 from that Atletico Madrid match. We see Guendouzi make his first start in place of Kamada, which looking at that, I think that's probably the right thing. Obviously Guendouzi coming in with a lot of hype, and Kamada needing to rotate. And this is, what we looked at this squad as a team that can now rotate, have some depth without seeing a major drop off in quality. We see Cataldi returning in place of Vecino in that regista role. We see Hisai at that left back in place of Pellegrini, and we see Isaksen starting over Felipe Anderson. When I looked at those changes, I wasn't disappointed. I thought, again, it was nice to give Felipe Anderson a reprieve. Mm-hmm. It was nice to see Guendouzi come in there, and so given that it was the first start for a couple new players, particularly 2 players like Isaksen and Guendouzi, who when subbed into matches really looked like two players that gave Lazio life in their substitution appearances, right? Like
Yeah.
two guys that were energy driven. And so my expectation coming out of this, again, coming off of a big draw, some new players getting opportunities, I expected maybe a little bit of disconnect and maybe some sloppy play, but I expected effort, I expected energy, and we've said this time and time again. We hurt ourselves. We cut into a match by throwing away the first 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes before we get going. And let's just take a look at this one. It started off well enough with Zaccagni earning a penalty, a clear penalty in which Cheeto converts in stone cold fashion. So 12 minutes into the match, Lazio up 1-0. And it seems that at that point, they essentially took the foot off the gas and allowed Monza all the time and space to do what they wanted. And 36 minutes in, Monza ends up leveling, on some pretty sloppy defending. And for the remainder of the match, you see Monza on the front foot. 16 shots attempted to Lazio's 8, 4 shots on target to Lazio's 1. 52% possession to Lazio's 48, dominating in passing stats. Just statistically, the superior team in again, a match that ended in 1-1. So, for you, where did it all go wrong?
For me, it all went wrong when instead of taking that penalty that we got and pushing hard after that, using that energy, using the crowd behind you to like, hey, let's bury this team this half. Instead of using that as a driving force for the rest of the game, for the rest of the half, we instead got complacent. We scored a goal. Hey, great. Now let's just kind of hang out, pass the ball around. Just kind of did like you said the word you described was asleep. We went back to sleep. And instead of using that to continue to drive and push, and bully aside that we should be bullying at home. We should be the one that has a higher possession stat. We should be the ones that are the front foot. We should be the ones creating chances. We should be the one peppering their goalkeeper with shots. Instead, it was the opposite.
Yep. Yeah, and we allowed them so much time on the ball. We sat back. We gave them possession. We allowed them to have possession. And, first 10, 15 minutes, I thought to myself, perhaps that would play in our favor, that maybe we would see a Lazio that was fine with conceding possession only to pounce and press and then quick counter. And we saw very little of that when we won back possession. I thought we were very, very slow on the ball. Again, an inability to be decisive in the final third. I thought, look, we'll go into man of the match. I thought, I thought us allowing Monza to just own possession, and again, the lack of any sort of urgency, both defensively and in attack, is ultimately where we lost the match. We made it way too easy on them for a team playing at home. Again, coming off of a big result. You can hate a result, but you can sometimes understand that results can happen, and don't always tell a full story. But what you want to see is the performance. And for me, this is what makes this match really, really depressing for me, is the performance was absolute garbage. All in all, it was absolute garbage. And the result, honestly, was barely deserved to come out of it with a draw. Again, Monza, by and large, was the better team, but not because of a lack of talent on our end. It comes down to just mentality. We simply gave that one away. And I want to go into man of the match, because I did think particularly two players came in with energy, I thought. And for me, my man of the match was Zaccagni. Earns the penalty. I thought he probably had his best match of the season. You saw the things that he did so well for much of last season. I mean, he is just tenacious on the ball. He could put his head down. He loves cutting to his right foot. He attempted some shots that weren't on target, but he kept pushing. And again, he was the one that won the penalty. And I thought, he had won a really nice tackle, running back on defense. And then my shout out was Ciro Immobile, because I thought he did really well to hold up play. I thought he did really well on a couple nice 1-2s, had a really nice opportunity with Guendouzi. I thought he had a couple, between Luis and Zaccagni. Obviously converts the penalty. Now, Cheeto wasn't perfect, because there are times where he just has to be a little bit more clinical. Talk about the opportunity at the end of the match where, he does really well. It's his pressure that ultimately wins the ball in the box. And it's a tough position. And, I probably, it's funny because there's so many times where I want him to make the selfish play, where I'd prefer he just take a quick shot. And that's probably unfair, because I think he often looks to make the right play. And this was an opportunity where I wanted him to make the pass. I think, there was a play he could have made, or at least just try to chip the keeper. And again, it's a tough situation. The keeper did get a hand on the ball, but he also took Cheeto down and made contact with Cheeto. So, probably the right call, but one in the moment, I thought could have been a penalty. But, and Cheeto did really, really well. I thought in the 40th minute, I thought there was a moment where he was tracking back like an absolute maniac and winning the ball and ultimately earning a yellow. Or I think Monza ended up fouling and taking a yellow in that moment. And I was like, this is what a captain does, right? He's not scoring, and he's doing everything else. Like, wake up! Your captain's doing it. Wake up!
Yeah,
and I thought really those were the only two players that played with energy. What did you think?
No, I in terms of starting 11, Zaccagni was also for the third week in a row we had the same one, but Zaccagni, yeah, clearly this is the Zaccagni that we saw a lot more of last season. I'm like, okay, he's still here. All right, great. And it was really fun to see him play again and just be a nightmare down that left side. And I thought Immobile as well was one of the few ones that actually, him and Zaccagni looked like the only ones that actually cared about winning this match, trying anything. And I do want to give since we have the same one, I do want to give just a quick shout out to like the substitutes who did bring some new life to the team. I thought Vecino had a good, I think Vecino's actually been one of our better players this season. If we were to just wrap up performances across the board, I would say Vecino's has been one of our better players this season, which is like great for him, but also like when you're back up, not really your starter, center mid is the one that's shining in a team where we have newfound and top talent in the same positions. That's concerning, right? But I thought the substitutes had good appearances, brought in some life, looked like they actually cared to win the game. But yeah, everyone else was pretty mid or bad.
Yeah, and look, to your point, I thought, again, agreed with the substitutions in this one. Maybe for the first time this season, and it's not as if Sadi waited too long. I mean, it was the 55th minute in which he substituted, taking off Isaacson for Felipe Anderson. We saw Pellegrini coming in for Hisai, and we saw Vecino coming in for Guendouzi. And again, did well pretty early in the second half. I thought maybe you could have made a substitution at halftime to send a message. But, I understand giving your team an opportunity to come in and show something different. So, by and large, I thought he did well for making those changes early on. And that is when we saw some things, right? Like 2 minutes after the substitution, Cheeto denied by the post.
Yeah.
Again, pressuring, winning the balls with the press. And again, super unlucky. It was his third time this season.
Yeah.
Hitting the woodwork. And it's just one of those starts to a season for Cheeto that's really, really frustrating. I obviously comes away with a goal, but one of those matches where I really hoped he would bag a couple just to get rolling and get his confidence going. But again, to your point, I thought the substitutions by and large played pretty well. Rovella came in and didn't do a ton. There wasn't, a ton of opportunities for him, but again, energy and coming in. And I think that was my one question mark with the starting 11 was wanting to see Rovella against his former club get a start. And so I'm hoping that comes against Torino, and also was great to see Pellegrini back in the lineup after taking that knock against Atletico Madrid that looks really, really bad. So what a superhero.
I'll add one thing to that as well. Like I was gonna say that I the only sort of thing that I would have maybe changed with substitutes is, while I get that Luis Alberto is really the only guy that seems to be able to unlock anything right now, the dude's been like playing every minute, practically. In that situation, rest Alberto. You have a big game against Torino as well. Bringing Kamada in, he played on against Atletico, but he acted like 60, 65 minutes against them. Like he should have been fresh. I would like to see that because Alberto was a bit slow today. He wasn't as sharp passing wise. He was a bit lazy with his decision making at times, and I think the dude's played almost every single minute possible. If not, has he played every minute? I can't remember the last time he's gone out.
Yeah, I can't remember either, but I think it is a fair point. I did think he was a little slower than usual. I also think that no fault to him. Maybe we are relying too much on Luis Alberto. We become really predictable, particularly with that starting 11, right? When you have Cataldi, who's not necessarily a playmaker, and then Guendouzi, who isn't like the most technical, creative player. It's like Luis is playing the role of regista. It seems from the points on the pitch where he's accepting the ball and creating offense, but then he's also that roaming attacking midfielder for us. And every time we have the ball, it's how do we find Luis Alberto? Yeah. And it just seems really predictable.
Well, that's what I was going to allude to. I was going to allude to also just sort of the general issue that the issues not Alberto starting every game. The main core issue, looking above the issue, is over reliance on a player when we've gone out and signed a lot of midfielders. And I don't know if that's more so Sadi just doesn't have enough belief in his current midfielding group, or if it's he's just been so good, he's undroppable. Which he's been good. And he's definitely been one of our better players this season for sure. Don't get me wrong. So I don't know what it is. But it'd be curious to see how things look like against Torino, because if he starts again against Torino, it would be a bit surprising, personally, just simply out of like just workload's sake. Like we have a whole season left, like chill, and we need this player. But
we also need results. So let's talk about our bidone of the match. Whose performance just deserved absolute, throwing in the trash.
There could be quite a few, but I went with Hisai in this case. I thought Hisai was just poor. He was just poor in every aspect, both offensively, defensively, weird touches, weird decision making, sort of a black hole over on that left side. And he was getting cooked on that side as well. And so it's also, when you have games like these, it's difficult to give a bidone, because if the whole team performs poorly, then you're going to look even worse as an individual, right? And in this case, the whole team, for the most part, was pretty poor. So it doesn't help his case. But in terms of who I thought had the worst match was probably Hisai.
Yeah, I had Hisai as one of the candidates. For me, I'm going to give it to Guendouzi. And
that's
maybe
fair.
part of it was expectations. Big opportunity for him against a side like Monza. you expect better. I thought he was largely invisible.
Yeah, no,
He
it's a good
he
shout.
didn't put his stamp on this match. It it took him getting subbed out and for a Vecino to come in and now put his name into the match and you see a lot more liveliness from the team. That for me was really, really disappointing. I also,
Yeah,
I think he's at fault for that goal because a ball gets played into the box and Patrick kind of gets his foot on it. I think Patrick's
yeah,
in the right place,
he
but
did. Yeah,
it was Guendouzi's man who ultimately makes that run and taps that ball in,
yeah.
and it's right over his shoulder. Guendouzi kind of jogs along, doesn't realize his guy is right behind him. I just,
Mhm.
it was a really, really poor one from him. So,
Yeah,
he's my winner. I thought his side was very poor. So, knowing that Pellegrini is healthy, I think it'll be nice to see him in the starting 11. I thought this was definitely one of Hisai's worst matches of the season. I think we let's talk about a panic meter. We're already getting comments in here about Sadi out. Where's your panic meter? Where are you on any sort of Sadi out hot takes? And I'm going to call them a hot takes because I largely disagree with that thought process. Where do you stand?
I think I had a 4 last time we discussed this, which was after the Milan game, and I would say I'm at a 6. I've kind of tipped over towards the more concerned side than the more optimistic side. I'm still not giving up on Sadi. I think it's ridiculous to say that this early in the game into the season. However, there is something to be said that we're what this is the 2.5 years into this for Sadi
Yep,
around.
yep. This
Uh,
third season.
I will say that and I understand a bunch of different pieces, but I wonder and I ask myself because I saw somebody here say who Mike Vittner. Mike said he looked clueless. Guendouzi looked clueless. I wonder how much of that goes down to Saudi and his system and explaining it, getting used to it, right? You got to get used to the system for sure. But I also wonder, like, is the instruction clear enough for these newer players that they're having, they're having a bit of difficulty adjusting? I don't know. But I'm at a 6. I'm still not giving up on Saudi. I still have belief in Saudi. I still think that he'll be able to get more out of this group. But things need to change now. And I'll add this as well. It's part of the reason why I use the word pathetic to describe the game was because our guys showed more energy. Our players showed more energy about trying to get a half penalty call. I'm talking about not just like the Immobile that went late, but Zakanya had another one too. Our guys had more energy, more fire to them, arguing with the referee than playing the game.
Yeah, I mean
That for me was ridiculous. I said, I cannot believe we're resorting to begging the referee for a penalty against Monza. Come on, bro. That's
yeah. I mean
pathetic.
that's a
That's
great
pathetic.
point
That's
because
pathetic.
in a tight match in Champions League or you're playing a Juve
Yeah,
Milan,
yeah.
sure, but yeah, you're right. I mean, we've got to be better than that.
For me, I was.
Tactically, we were poor. Obviously, the energy levels were poor, and it's on a manager to get that right, no doubt. Like he's got to prepare his team to come out there with the right attitude. He's got to understand how Monza is going to play, but we got to pump the brakes. We finished second in the table. We've
Yeah,
seen nothing but progress,
yeah.
and going into Sadi's third season with us, and there are a lot of new players that need to
Mhm.
adjust. They need to grow. The results are unacceptable, and
I,
we're
I
we're
will.
not
Can
at
I?
the 10 game mark yet, and we need to see some improvement, and we've seen some signs, right? Like against Atletico Madrid. Where was that team tonight?
Yeah,
Why couldn't we have played with that sort of energy? And if we can come out and outclass Atletico Madrid
yeah.
against Monza, but this is the story of Lazio. This has been Lazio's doom for the past 5, 6, 7 years, dating back to Inzaghi's tenure. So it's tough. I'm by no way staking any sort of claim to Sadi out right now.
What is your panic meter?
My panic meter, of course, it's climbing. I think I was at a 2 or a 3, so I think a 4, a 5. Missed opportunity, man. Juventus lost to Sassuolo today, and we continue to see that gap. That's going to put us in a really tough position. We're in Champions League, so anything short of qualifying for Champions League again is a failure, and is certainly falls short of what our goals are this season. Now, I'm not one of those fans that think that a manager has to go just because you fall short. Even when we get to the end of the season, I think there are a lot of things you have to factor in, and we'll see what the play looks like at the end of the season. But right now it's definitely problematic. I think we should be concerned, and we need to see. I think it puts a ton of pressure, and be very interested to see how this team comes out and handles that pressure against Torino, because we're at home once more, and then off to San Siro we go. And this is a midweek match. We play this match on Wednesday against Torino. So you mentioned a lot of minutes on Luis Alberto. Quick turnaround. So who do you want to see in the starting 11 against Torino on Wednesday?
Before I go into that, I'll just say one more thing. You mentioned that the results haven't been acceptable. I would argue the performances haven't been acceptable. That's the main concern for me, because you said it earlier, right? They are performances that you are not ideal, but you could be proud of still, right? Like Atletico Madrid, hey, maybe if we were a little more clinical, a little sharper, less unlucky, we should get a win, right? But the performance is something to be proud of. And I think that's the biggest frustration with the team right now, is that against poor quality competition, our performance aren't even up to par. If we're dominating these games, getting chance after chance, and we're just not finishing those chances, that's different. But we're not even getting those chances.
So look, we're in the same group chat, and somebody mentioned this team missing Milinkovic-Savic, and we've seen that on social media. Where do you stand? Is it as simple as this team misses the quality of Sergei Milinkovic-Savic, and this is what we're seeing? That's
a great question, and it's a valid one. And I was my stance on this is no, it's not significant in this, because second half of the season, Milinkovic-Savic is maybe the worst version of himself that we've seen at Lazio so far. He was kind of invisible a lot of that last part of the season, that second half of the season. He had a good start, and he kind of faded off. But we were still getting results. We were still getting wins. We were still getting performances. And I don't think his loss is the reason why we're losing games. If you were to tell me, hey, we're getting beat by teams because we're lacking size in the midfield, no, that's not why we're losing games. We're not losing games because we don't have a 6'4" guy in the midfield anymore. That's not the reason why. So that's sort of my stance on it. What about you?
Yeah, I largely agree, because we're not seeing a dip in performances that are measured by inches. We're talking about a pretty significant drop from our highest of highs last year to where we are at now. Again, we finished second in the table, and we saw some great Sadi ball. Right now, we're seeing a drop off from a lot of areas, which is obviously concerning. And I don't think one player, regardless of who it is, but to your point, we didn't have an elite Sergei Milinkovic-Savic for a good portion of last season. Yeah. So, we were able to manage that without him. We're not just managing without him right now. We've just lost our minds. And so I don't, Cataldi is not himself. Cataldi is not as good as he was last year.
Yeah.
And so, you look at that. You look at, I think Luis Alberto is playing as well as he's ever played this year. So, that's a positive. I think, we talk about Zaccagni. If we're going down the lineup, he's a player that for most of this season hadn't played well, and I thought he played really, really well today. Ciro Immobile hasn't been his best. and he wasn't either last year, who was injured for a lot of the season. Felipe Anderson hasn't been as good as he was last year.
Yep.
And you just go down the back line, they haven't been as strong. I mean, we have Casale, benched for Patrick right now. So I think there are a lot of individuals that need to step up in a big way. And we need to start questioning who's in the starting 11 right now. I think jobs should be on the line. For me, clear cut. If we're looking at Torino, I want to see Rovella. I think for me, it's absolutely time. He's had a couple moments off the bench. Let's assume fitness wise, he's ready to go for a full 90, or at least right off the jump. He's got to be in there. I think. Felipe Anderson, let's put him back in. He's got to start this match for me. And Zaccagni, this is a must win for me. And I know Milan is big, and we're going to need to have guys fresh, but I think we've got to go all out. We've got to come out full press, and there has to be a cutthroat mentality. I mean, this is a match that we've got to come out 3-4-0, and then we can sub some guys off. Let's play with the idea that we've got Milan, so let's go full out, and then let's sit some guys and rest in the final 20 minutes. But we can't do the inverse. Like we can't start off slow, and then hope that maybe the last 15 minutes we can go all out and hope for 3 points. That's got to stop.
Yes, I totally agree. You asked me on who I wanted to see. I'm also of the same mindset of that we're at home. We got to take these 3 points at home. And in my opinion, based on form, based on what they've shown us this season, and based on the little time they've played together, it seems to me that the midfield trio to go with is Alberto, Kamada, and Rovella. Those guys have all had decent year so far, and the one time we did see them together, we looked so much more dynamic, so much more threatening, so much more active. And Mike Vittner mentioned that we lost our spirit over the summer here. Well, Rovella has that spirit that Cataldi, for whatever reason, just hasn't been able to find. Rovella, it looks hungry, it looks passionate. And I'll say that for the rest of the team, of course, Pellegrini starts at left back. I think you go with Zaccagni, Immobile, and Felipe as well. But I also think that you are also ruthless in terms of if those guys don't show the energy by halftime, if there are people that are slacking, if there are people that are being complacent, that's when you have to send a message at that point. For me, that's sort of how I would approach it, is that start those guys, and at halftime, if those guys are just not cutting it, if you're seeing some laziness, if you're seeing some complacency, if you're just not cutting it, take him out. Take him out. Because like you said, starting jobs are on the line. At this point, it should be strictly based on, okay, who really wants to come here and play? Who wants to come here and play for the badge? Who wants to put on a performance that can make the fans proud, right? And so you go with the best starting 11, which I think is what I just mentioned. And then, hopefully you bury that game early, right? Come out hot, come out angry. That's what I hope to see from the team, to come out and play angry. Because right now it looks like, we lost, whatever. No big deal, whatever, we'll get, And I want to see people pissed, right? And Immobile is one of the few ones that he looks angry, right? But yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on how we approach Torino.
Yep. Torino's a must win. And I hate saying must win because let's be honest, nothing's on the line right now.
Yeah.
However, we are digging ourselves a really tough hole to climb out of. So Torino, Wednesday, we've got to see energy. We've got to see a team that has a fighting spirit. Anything short of that, we start asking questions.
Minimum.
So,
that's the minimum.
An absolute minimum. And Torino is not a team to take lightly. They are a team that we've struggled with. We've dropped points against, and at this point, you can't take anything lightly. We know this team likes to play down to competition, but when you finish a match against Monza 1-1, everything's a question. So we've got to do better, and we've got to see that tenacity for us. As you said, bare minimum, must win match. As always, we're going to be here to talk about it, cover it, win, lose, or draw. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify. Give us those 5-star ratings. Subscribe to the podcasts on those audio formats, and we're on TikTok and Instagram as well, folks. So check us out. Show us some love on there. We are doing our best to try and bring as much Lazio content to the English-speaking world as we can. So we will see you on Wednesday following Lazio Torino. As always, sempre Forza Lazio.